So welcome everyone. Welcome to Learn SQL Server in 16 hours. So in this complete tutorial, we are going to go and learn SQL Server step by step in 16 hours. So what we are going to go and cover in 16 hours, that I have put on the video out there. So you can see that there is a complete syllabus, which I will be covering in these 16 hours. Now, before we start with any of the topics of the syllabus, the first thing, I think we should know is that from where to go and download SQL Server, right? So in order to get SQL Server, go ahead and type download SQL Server on Google, and you should get something like SQL Server downloads. So if you go to SQL Server downloads, you should get this page. So there it is. Now it is very much possible that these links, what you are seeing now at this video, can change, because the Google search engine changes, the links from Microsoft changes, right? So in case you are not able to locate this page, then please do go us and send us an email at questpond@questpond.com, and we will make sure that you are able to locate, from where to download SQL Server. Now SQL Server comes with a lot of versions, but let us concentrate on primarily two versions, which we need to know. The first one is the free version, which is termed as the Express Edition. So in Express Edition, you get it free. You can do development for free using it. You can also go for production, go live, right, using it. But it has very, very limited features. Okay. While in Developer Edition, you get, it's a fully featured thing. You can go and do development. You can go and do test on non-production environment. Non-production means not with the real customer. Inside your development house, you can go and learn SQL Server. You can do testing and so on, right? Now, my goal through this training is to make you a real professional SQL Server developer. So we are going to go and install Developer Edition and not Express Edition, because what I feel is that Express Edition, does not have those important features, when it comes for real development, right? So I feel that Developer Edition is much needed, right? So go ahead and download Developer Edition and install in your computer. Now, in case you are having problems with installation, then please do go us and send us a mail at questpond@questpond.com. I will make sure that you do not have any hassles with the installation. So I will give you a step-by-step guide, where you can go and see how to go and install SQL Server properly in your machine, right? So once you have installed SQL Server, right, what happens is you will get this SQL Server Management Studio out here, right? And by using this Management Studio, we can go ahead and we can do activities with SQL Server. We can create tables, we can create databases and so on, right? So go ahead, download SQL Server and start installing it. It's a simple setup. In case you are not able to do the setup yourself, please send us a mail. I'll send you a detailed step-by-step list, how to install SQL Server in your computer, right? So let me go up and open this Management Studio out here. So I'm going to go and click on this. So there the SQL Server Management Studio has opened. Now you can see that at this moment I'm using SQL Server 2008, and must be that you would be using SQL Server 2016 or 2012, right? But do not worry, at least for the fundamental section, you won't see a lot of changes, right? So the menus, the UI, it's almost same. So wherever new things are there, I will be doing in the new version, right? So do not worry that this video is in SQL Server 2008, but still all the menus, what you will be seeing here is valid for 2016 as well, right? In case you are not getting this screen, right, this login screen inside SQL Server, you can go and click here, File, and you can say Connect Object Explorer. So one is that you should get that default screen, but in case you are not getting it, then please click on File and say Connect Object Explorer. Now, before we move ahead, let us quickly try to define what is the use of SQL Server. I understand that a lot of people who have come to this video, you already know about it, but let me still define it. SQL Server is a software which is created by Microsoft, and the main goal of SQL Server is to store data using the relational model. So it is a RDBMS. It is a relational database management system to store data. Now there are two major softwares, which gets installed, when you install SQL Server. The first one is a service. A service is nothing but it is a background process. So if you go to services.msc, you will find that there is something called as the SQL Server service. So you can see here I have SQL Server 2008 as a service. Also you can see that I have SQL Express also installed, right? So you can have multiple versions of SQL Server installed in the same computer if you wish. So this service over here is the heart of SQL Server. It is that main core engine, which does searches, which creates tables, which handles all that things, right? But now in order to go and create tables, in order to go and back up your database, search, right? Definitely, via this service would be very difficult, right? So they have created something called as the SQL Server Management Studio. This one, what you see here. So via this SQL Server Management Studio, we go and we connect to the service and we do our activities. So remember that there are two major components. One is the service which is running at the background, which is handling that relational RDBMS things, right? The core things. And then you have this GUI, via which you can connect to that service and you can create tables and so on, right? So I'm going to go and connect from this SQL Server Management Studio to my SQL Server service over here, right? Remember that if your service is not started, then you can get this error. For example, you can see at this moment my service is running, but for some reason if my service is stopped, let us say for some reason your SQL Server service is stopped, right? And if you try to go and connect via the Management Studio, you would end up into exception. So you can get such kind of exception. It's connecting. You can see I'm saying connect. Now this SQL Server Management Studio is trying to connect to that background SQL Server process. But because that SQL Server process I have stopped at this moment, I would land up into an error. It's taking time. Let's give it some time. So there it is. You can see here, it says that while establishing a connection to SQL Server, we found it that it was not accessible, right? So if I now go and restart my service, so if I go and start my service and if I go and connect, then I will not have issues. So you can see I'm starting my service. Let it start. So there it is. So now if I go and try connecting again, it should work. Oh, what is the problem? Connect to local. Actually, there was a wrong entry, right? I just connected to the local PC. And there you can see now via this SQL Server Management Studio, I am connected to my background service. And now I can go and see databases. I can create tables and I can do a lot of activities. So we'll come to that, right? But before I move ahead, right, let me again explain this screen, what is here, this authentication screen. Now, when you talk about data, right, data should be only accessed by authorized and authenticated people, right? So you don't want like everyone to just go and get data, right? From the security point of view, SQL Server has given two ways of authenticating yourself. The first one is termed as a Windows authentication, and the second one is termed as a SQL Server authentication. Now, in SQL Server authentication, you are given a login ID and a password. So you need to go and provide the login ID and a password and you can go and do the SQL Server activities. While in Windows authentication, you have to log into your Windows account of the computer. So for example, at this moment, I'm logged in with the user called as user. So if you see at this moment, my login is user, you can see over here, right? So I will be, going via the Windows, right, to SQL Server to authenticate. Okay, so there are two ways of doing it. One is you log in into the Windows system. The Windows system username is used to authenticate to SQL Server. And the second one is by using the username and password, right? Now, Windows authentication is more secure. Why? Because when you log in with Windows authentication, somebody has given you access to the server. And from there, there is a indirect impersonation done to SQL Server, right? In password authentication, what happens is, or in SQL Server authentication, what happens is anybody who gets your login ID and a password, he can just access SQL Server, right? So definitely both of them have their own benefits and own issues, right? We will discuss about that when we discuss about security in detail. But for now, remember that we have two ways of authenticating. One is by using the Windows authentication and the other one is by using the SQL Server authentication. In Windows authentication, you have to be logged in into the operating system to access SQL Server, while in SQL Server authentication, you are given a username and a password, and then you can log in. So at this moment, I'm going to go and log into Windows by using the Windows authentication, and I will be connecting to my RDBMS engine. When I say this engine is nothing but this process at the background, right? And this engine is running at this moment in my local host or in my local computer. So I'm going to go and say connect. Once I connect, I get such kind of an object explorer, where I see all the objects of SQL Server. So in case you don't get this window, what you can do is you can click on view and you can click on object explorer and you can get it, right? So if the window is coming by default, it is fine. If it is not coming by default, click on view, object explorer, and then you can start doing things over here. SQL Server organizes data in the format of database, tables, rows, and columns. So on the top level, we have a database. So let us say we can have a database called as the invoice database. Inside the invoice database, we can have supplier table, we can have customer table, we can have accounts table, we can have invoices, products table, and so on. And every table will have row, and row will be structured in a column format. So must be your customer table will have a customer row, and the customer row will have customer code as a column, customer name as a column, customer amount as a column, and so on. So SQL Server organizes data in the format of database, which is nothing but having collection of tables, and table has rows and rows has columns. So let us go ahead and create a database here called as invoice. And in the invoice database, let us create a table called as customer, and we will create two fields in that customer table. One is customer code and the other one is customer name, right? So in order to create a database, you have to go to the object explorer. In case you are not able to see the object explorer, you have to click on view and go to object explorer, and you need to click on this databases node over here. You can see that when I click on the plus sign, I see lots of databases here, right? So I need to go and create a new database. So I'll click on this and I'll say new database, and we will give a name here saying invoice DB, right? Now when you create a database in SQL Server, it creates two files. So whatever data you are storing in SQL Server gets stored into two files. One is, you can see the invoice DB file, which is the MDF file, and the other one is a log file. So you can see that when you're creating this database, at the end of the day, your database is a simple file, wherein everything gets stored. So it is getting stored into this program files, SQL Server, and all that. In case you want to go and change that, you can always do it, right? So we'll talk about both of these files, sometimes later. So at this moment, I'm going and creating this invoice DB, and let us say okay, and later on I'll talk more about these two files which gets created. Okay, so I'll say okay, and there you can see my invoice DB has been created, right? Now inside this invoice DB, let us go and create a table. So you can see there's a tables folder. So I'm going to go and create a table here called as customer, or I can say TBL customer. Okay, so inside this TBL customer, I will have two fields here. So let me create a field here called as customer code, and I will see at this moment we're going to go and store nvarchar. Nvarchar means this is going to be a string data type. So we're going to have values which has numeric as well as strings, and I will say customer name, right? And I will say Control S. You can either say Control S or you can either press this save button. So I'm going to go and press save. He now says me that, okay, so do you want to name this table as table 1? I'll say no, let us name this as TBL customer, right? So there it is created. I can go and close this. In order to see that if my table has been created or not, again, go back to the object explorer. Let us go and click on this plus sign, and you can see that here you have the invoice DB at the top. Then you have the table, and the table has two columns, customer code and customer name. So in short, the way SQL Server organizes its data. So we have database, then we have tables, and tables has columns, and inside this table we go and we store rows. So in other words, if I want to go and add a customer record, I can go and now right click and say edit, And in this, I can go and add records. So I can say, okay, one record is 1001, then say Shiv, 2001, then say Raju. So you can see now I'm storing records over here. So that brings us to the end of the first 15 minutes of Learn SQL Server step by step in 16 hours. So we have completed the first 15 minutes and we have more 15 hours and 45 minutes still pending. So in the first 15 minutes, we saw, from where to get SQL Server, then what is the concept of database, what is the concept of tables, what are the concept of rows and columns. And we also created a simple database, a table, as well as we inserted some records. Now in the next video, we will talk about what is the identity column, what is referential integrity, what are constraints, what is a primary key, what is a unique key, and what is a foreign key. So the next session, it will be a long session. So see you in the next video, and let us try to become a proper SQL Server professional. Thank you. First thing, I would like to thank everyone to bearing me for 15 minutes. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Now that you have heard me for 15 minutes, so here is a small gift from me. So I'm going to go and give you this small SQL Server Q&A book, wherein I have covered a lot of questions like, normalization. I have covered SQL. So a lot of fundamental SQL things I have covered in this book, like joins and indexes and so on. So in order to get this book, what you have to do is you have to go and share this current YouTube video on your Facebook or on your Twitter account and send us the link saying that here I have shared and we give you this ebook for free, right? So please go ahead, share this ebook, send us a mail at questpond@questpond.com, this email, right? And we will provide you this ebook via the email. So thank you very much. So in the next class, we're going to go and talk about primary keys. We're going to go and talk about identity. We're going to go and talk about referential integrity, foreign keys, unique keys, and so on. So keep hearing and let us try to become a SQL Server professional. Thank you.